Hi, my name is Shanna and I am a medical student at UBC. I wanted to make this video about a commonly asked question, how to choose where to go to university. So I went to UBC, so 100% this is going to be biased towards staying at UBC. Where we go doesn't really matter that much. I remember when I was in grade 12, I was super stressed out thinking about which university I should go to. I was like applying to a lot. I was like going back and forth asking lots of people I knew, people that were in medicine, people not in medicine, people at different schools, like, you know, what school is the best school to go to medical, you know, get into medical school. And I thought there had to be a perfect choice, and now I realize, so in my school at UBC, there's people who went to all sorts of schools. There's a lot of people who did go to UBC, but there's people who went to like McGill and UT, big known schools, but there's also a lot of people who went to like lesser known schools, so like smaller colleges, like private little colleges. People went to the States. Just, I really don't think the prestige of a university matters that much. I actually thought that was a factor, but I don't think it really matters. I think it's a lot about what you make of your experience. I don't really think either there's a superior experience, and I think the answer is very different for each person. So what is suitable for someone who, you know, thrives in a, you know, bustling big city life versus someone who's, you know, happier in a smaller campus, is a very outdoorsy person. It's, you know, it's very different. And I think if you're a very hardworking, motivated student, you will, and you're working really hard towards going into medical school, and you take advantage of every opportunity, you will have just as good a chance of getting into medical school no matter where you go. So I hope you just kind of keep faith in yourself that you are the most important factor, not all these like small factors, and then take that stress off you. So then to think about, like, for me, why I was really happy I went to UBC. So I'm born and raised in Vancouver, and all of my family and friends are here in Vancouver. I really felt it was helpful for me to be around my support system, so my family, and I still live at home, and that's like really nice and helpful, you know, when you're really busy with school, to be at home and have some and then I think something for me, a big one, was honestly finances. It just sounds, you know, not something you think about when I was in high school very much, but I think it is a huge money saver. Number one, to live at home. There's like a home kind of province advantage. So for you, at least in UBC, the tuition is super cheap, you know, compared going to the States. You know, I think it was only, when I first started school, I think it was under $5,000. And then there's a lot of scholarships here in BC that you can only use within BC or Canada. There was a lot, I think it had to be a BC institution, and that was the case for me. Finance was something I did have to consider when it came to tuition, and I really thought about it. Even though I had like a tuition, like a full scholarship tuition to, say, the school in the States, I actually found that the cost of like living in a dorm would have been like really exorbitant, and it's like in USD. And so you know, that's something to think about. If you don't have to think about it, then, you know, don't include it. But I just thought that's really important because I know I'm going to medical school and I have to pay like tuition for 4 years of residency, and it's important for me to save. And so other factors are activities. There was a lot of activities that I was doing here because I went to high school here that I wanted to continue. So you know, that could be different for you. That could be maybe even volunteering at a particular nonprofit as a cause you like, or a hospital, or if you're lucky enough to be involved in something like research, if you have the chance to or like a really strong mentorship relationships and you wanted to continue those, that's a factor that you would have to give up if you move to another place. Not necessarily, but I was really grateful to be able to continue some of those like things I was involved in. I felt like UBC was a really good choice for me in terms of the things I wanted to do. So again, like when you think about the different universities, say, you know, SFU versus, actually, you know, I didn't really consider that hard about other universities, but like, you know, if you're considering like SFU versus UBC or U of T or whatever, so like think about like, well, like what kind of majors do I want to do? For me, when I, for example, I was comparing Berkeley versus UBC, I was looking at different majors. So at UBC, I was interested in like pharmacology and physiology, maybe microbiology, and there's like a lot of different majors I'd be kind of interested in. I think at Berkeley I got into for something like cognitive neuroscience, and I was like, it sounded interesting to me at the time. I wasn't really interested in the arts that much, and so I didn't want to have to take like all these courses I didn't really want to take in terms of like pre-med specific activities. There's a lot of great research, and there's like, you know, Vancouver is ripe with a lot of hospitals and volunteering, which I didn't actually do, but I think that's something I would have considered more if that's something I was interested in. There's a lot of opportunities for leadership, and it's not, yeah, so that's kind of like there, and it's like, it's, you know, there's like and then there's like, you know, research awards and etc. And it's affiliated with its own medical school, which I think is really important to consider, because you could work with faculty, you know, that eventually you continue working with when you get into medical school, versus say Berkeley doesn't have its own medical school. They're affiliated. There's a UCSF, so that's kind of like different for me. There's no like UC Berkeley medical faculty to do like research with, or so things like, you know, to consider too. Like I ended up majoring at UBC in neuroscience and pharmacology. Honestly, that kind of ended up almost the same thing. So like what I'm saying is like all these like small factors that I thought were like, oh, these are so different, these are so important, it really ends up almost the same. So I didn't really look that much into it, but for example I considered like Waterloo, but I think the major that they offered me wasn't like super interesting. I think it was just like plain biology or plain something I wasn't super interested in. It's not, again, as Waterloo wasn't affiliated with a medical school. I didn't actually apply to UT. I wasn't really interested in going to UT. I asked about U of T a lot though, so this is pulling from an experience of one of my good friends who goes to U of T. It sounds like when she lived there, it sounds like they had a really intense kind of residence life. So it sounds almost like you go to the States and you just have this whole, like, you're part of a residence and they all do like these activities and they live in these like halls, and I don't know, it sounds pretty interesting and fun. And it seems like there's a lot of activities that there's ripe with, like, if you like anything from like singing and joining choirs, and you can join plays, and you can join like a Russian language association, and there's like tons of research opportunities, and there's tons of hospitals to volunteer at, and there's like tons and tons of everything, and it's like a great city to live in. I believe the cost of living is like quite high, but I think my friend really enjoyed it, and enjoyed it so much that she went on to do more graduate studies in the same city. So it goes to show it's a great place to be. So anyways, that's my really short tips on choosing a factor I've been asked a lot about is like, is it easy to get good grades? I felt like it was decently easy to get good grades here at UBC because we don't grade on a curve. So most of the classes that I took, at least in science, and then if they were exam based, it was like pretty easy. But I think it's like hard to say, like there are class, it's like, I think it's more like class and major dependent. I do think it's easier than compared to SFU, where they all grade on a curve, or I believe Berkeley also grades on a curve. So I think like that is something to consider in terms of like getting good grades or not. I don't remember what U of T does, but I think, yeah, that is something to consider. A factor that people ask me about is like, is UBC a good place or a hard place to get good grades? I thought UBC was relatively good because, at least in UBC Sciences, the classes I took, I didn't have any classes that were graded on a curve. A lot of them were exam based, so it's easier to get a higher mark as opposed to like paper based or project based classes. I believe SFU is harder, Berkeley is harder. Any of those universities that like to grade on curves, I think it's harder because then you have to compete to be that certain top percent to get a good grade. That said, I think just because a university has like a scary reputation, I don't necessarily think that necessarily means it's easier or harder to get good grades. I think a lot of it is also just like class dependent, being very careful about choosing your class, about choosing your major, being reasonable about your workload and how much stuff you like cram into your life. The advice that I always give people though is like, in your first year university, no matter where you go, graded a curve or not, just try to take it easy in that first year. Don't overload yourself with like too many extracurriculars or get too intense about the courses, just like to ease yourself in, because it's a big transition. Yeah, overall I think there are some universities that are easier to get good grades and others. I think UBC might be one of them, but don't take my word for it. So that was my just short tips on choosing a university. So short summary is, I really don't think it matters that much. Just choose a place that you think you will be happy. Maybe choose a place that has like the weather and the environment, the surroundings of things that you will like to enjoy outside of your classwork. And yeah, really think about like just some practical things for you. So support, location, proximity to your family, finances, and kind of account for that. But just wherever you go, just work hard and things will work out.